it is just a total black cloud, and it totally clouds your eyesight. In fact, one woman was so injured she was bloody and had dust all over her, took shelter in our live van, and we spoke with her as well. Here is what she had to say.
I was standing next to One World Trade Center, and then all of a sudden I heard rumbling, and we all started running away from it. The glass like blew out and threw me onto the sidewalk, and I couldn't see for like 20 seconds. And then I started seeing vaguely the street, and I just started walking, and my eyesight came back.
And I want to give you a live picture of our live truck just to show you the kind of dust cloud we're talking about. The doors were open and we had to abandon it. You can see this is what is pretty much covering the streets as well. It's dust, pieces of the building, and that's what's been so dangerous. It's hard to breathe inside of it. And I tell you, I want to come over here and try to find, I was speaking with a gentleman just a couple of moments ago, and you'll bear with us because things are a little chaotic right now. As we come around, this man's niece was actually inside the building. Can you tell us what happened?
You okay, sweetheart?
If here she's talking to her right now.
Girl, man, you have my heart, man. You got me over here worried about you.
Yeah, I'm okay. I left work when the first plane hit, and I ran to the Manhattan Bridge and Allen.
She's okay?
Ricky picked me up.
All right, yeah, good. Girl, man, you got me over here going crazy, waiting for you, trying to find that information with you. Thank God, man. Where are you right now?
Certainly his niece, who is in the building, he's been running around here simply worried. She is obviously okay, and we just want to keep showing you what we see here. And just to show you all the dust on the street, you can see Todd Pierce as we look down the street here. This vehicle comes down, kicking up all the dust. Police have been kept on moving us back. They're just not sure what's going to happen next, and that's what the imminent danger is right now, the uncertainty of it all. We are here. We are trying to link back up with the mayor and some officials from the Office of Emergency Management. We will let you know what they have to say as soon as we can bring it to you, but we can tell you now police are on every single street corner directing people around, trying to get folks out of the streets, and the World Trade Center continues to burn. Back to you.
That was Jeff Russin reporting from Lower Manhattan. A couple of things that you should note. Several victims have been taken to New Jersey hospitals, and because they couldn't be taken via bridge or tunnel, they were loaded onto boats and simply carried across the Hudson River. As you gentlemen have been saying throughout the morning, we have absolutely no idea in terms of the exact number of casualties, but we know that the number will be substantial. Mayor Giuliani is planning to have a news conference. Jeff caught him walking the streets of Lower Manhattan, surveying the damage so that he can have a first-hand account, not only of what has happened.
Honestly believe, and I truly believe, didn't think we were going to get clear of this fireball, whatever it was.
This perhaps may have been the blast. We have reports now of blasts at the base of the tower.
And it was, and Todd, it was at the base. It was where we saw this fireball emanate from, looked like it was almost a ground up, but it was, and I'm guessing here because I was running too hard, it was stories high and it was rolling.
What were you thinking? I mean, you're this high-powered journalist who, as you said, you've covered a lot of scary situations before, but at this point, I'm a journalist as well. I don't know what I would have done. I don't know if I would have still been in my journalist mode or if I just would have been in my panicked citizen mode.
All you can do when something like that is happening is try to survive. That's what those firefighters were doing, and helping along the way. I mean, people were doing anything they could to help one another.
Other people, yeah.
You know, it was, I saw police and paramedics just taking each other's hand for a moment, just checking in. You know, you're alive, I'm alive, thank God we're alive.
And then they go back to work, which is the most amazing thing.
They go back to work, and it's not just the fire and it's not just the flames. The smoke is, when those things collapse, is as crushing as I've ever seen. It was like breathing insulation or plaster. It was fibers, and it was particles, and you could not see. And you began to wonder if this is what it's like when people can't breathe anymore because they have too much smoke.
Right.
Smoke inhalation, of course. Yeah.
And so, you know, again, we cover fires, we cover bomb blasts.
But this is so much more than that. In fact, there's a report now. Senator Chuck Hagel of Nebraska compared this to Pearl Harbor, in fact, calling this a second Pearl Harbor. Being so close to it, to the enormity of what has happened here in New York as well as around this country, has it impacted you at all yet?
Yes.
I mean, obviously, physically it has.
But it's not, it's that you know, you worry for us as a people.
Sure.
You worry about those poor people who were in that building. I saw Dan Rather and I just were talking. He said, "Did you see a lot of people on stretchers?" I saw some, but more than anything else, I saw empty streets, which leads me to believe, at least where I was, the people who died were still in the building.
Yes.
And perhaps there are people who have lived who are still in the building. You pray that's true.
You pray that's true. I see that. I see your eyes
It's,
getting
you know,
glazed over. It's devastating, Carol.
It's devastating, and the enormity of it, I don't think any of us has at all absorbed. There are firefighters and paramedics and news people and citizens out there fearing what's happening to the gas mains.
Sure.
There is, but what was so impressive was that people, by and large, did not panic. You know, people.
You go into a survival mode.
People
and you just
marched down those bridges and, you know, and down those streets with fear and with tears, but with a certain determination to stay calm, and that was enormously impressive.
Well, this is an attack in many ways on the fabric of American life.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And I think in these ways it becomes a test of American resolve. I think comparing it to a military attack is, as Senator Hagel did, is quite accurate if you really think about it. In many ways, this is going to test all of us into how we respond. Certainly the U.S. government is being tested now, perhaps in a way it never has been before.
But, you know, all I can see this at right now, because I think I lack a bit of perspective, is on that incremental human level.
Yes.
The firefighter that saves you, the policeman who takes your hand, the bus driver who I hitched a ride on a New York bus that was empty. They were all being sent back to the bus barn.
Yes.
His name was Bill McRae, and Bill said, "I'll just take you to the broadcast
Bill,
center."
thank you.
Did you get a chance to thank the firefighter?
I did not, and I don't even know his name. He went, you know, he went back to work and handed me off to.
Chosen randomly where they hit the Pentagon. Can you tell us what the function of those people in that particular ring was, where it was hit?
Well, it's interesting because a number of people, and this really wasn't sarcastic, but they said, well, they hit on the wrong side, because just the opposite side of the building, of course, you have the offices of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. We were on that side of the building when the plane hit. We felt the building shake, the windows rattle, and looking outside immediately saw people on the run. There was pandemonium in the hallways. Now that section of the Pentagon, I thought at first when it was described to me that it may have hit in an area where some of the special operations offices are located. The Assistant Secretary for Special Operations is located near there, but the plane actually hit maybe about 60 to 70 feet to the right of that location. In that part of the building, there's it's very near a mall area, actually, where they have a shopping area for Pentagon employees. After all, there are 25 to 30,000 employees in there on any given day. And also in that part of the building, you had many Navy personnel, many reserve personnel. I bumped into many Army personnel who are adjacent to that. They think everybody's all right. The Navy people I talked to said they still had a few people that were unaccounted for. But again, it's going to be impossible to tell exactly what the casualty count is in there until they get that fire under control.
Matt.
All right, Jim Mikoszewski outside the Pentagon, thanks very much. Joining us now is General Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the commander of all forces in the Persian Gulf War. General Schwarzkopf, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Obviously, you've seen the footage, I'm sure, of the Pentagon and of southern Manhattan. We haven't seen much footage outside Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts this morning?
Well, you know, it's a very, very sad day for this country. It's really a sad day for the world as far as I'm concerned, and your heart goes out to all those families, and your prayers go out to all those people who lost their lives.
We are fighting a war now, it seems, a terrorist war here in this country. The question is, how do we go about fighting it, General?
Well, you know, that's one of those easy questions to ask and one of those very tough questions to answer. The deterrence against terrorists is almost impossible because these are people who could care less about their own survival. And normally deterrence is just says, you know, you hit me and we hit you back harder. And in this case, these people don't care whether they lose their lives or not, and therefore it makes it doubly tough to deter. The fact is that the world is getting smaller, and you know, terrorism has come to our shores because we have the ability to span oceans and great distances in a very short time.
Yeah, General, have you been able to talk to anyone at the Pentagon and get some updates on who may have been injured or lost?
No, I mean, the information that I've heard is basically what you all have, and that's it. You know, they didn't hit the very critical parts, and therefore maybe we don't have as many casualties there. But when you look at what happened at the World Trade Center and the number of casualties that they probably have there, it's just horrendous.
General Schwarzkopf, hi, it's Katie. I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously you've been in the military for a long, long time. Have you ever heard, or is this a method of destruction that the U.S. military was aware of and had concerns about, where they would actually, hijackers would use a plane as a flying bomb?
Well, Katie, you know, Tom Clancy wrote a book about just that. Several years ago, he wrote a book about a Japanese pilot crashing his 747 directly into the Capitol building and wiping out the national government. And so it's not something that's new. Obviously, what's kind of shocking is we thought we had good protection against hijacking of aircraft, and what's very apparent today is that something needs to be done about that if this many aircraft can be hijacked all at the same time.
Meaning security at airports across the country, General?
That and many other measures that could be taken, but I mean, it's kind of frightening when you consider the number of aircraft that were simultaneously hijacked and apparent with, I don't know, I can't say with apparent ease, I don't know, but it did in fact happen, and that's kind of frightening in itself.
Well, also, General Tom Brokaw here, the failure of intelligence here. I know it's always easy to say that at this point, but this is a very sophisticated and obviously widespread, complex operation that was planned. It was very tightly held in the most sophisticated way.
Yeah, Tom, but you and I both know that getting inside the intelligence, getting inside a terrorist group is probably the most difficult type of penetration that you can do. I mean, you've got to have somebody on the inside that can let you know what's going on, and that's not always the easiest thing to do in this type of terrorist organization.
All right, thank you very much, General Norman Schwarzkopf. We'll be back in touch with you throughout the day as we get more information. We'd love to get your oversight on all of this if we can.
Okay, Tom.
So let's go to Paul Bremer now, Ambassador Paul Bremer, who is the chairman of the National Commission on Terrorism. Mr. Ambassador, do we have any idea what's...
Venture a guess to say that it will not be long before the news helicopters are removed. We have seen several military aircraft operating over Manhattan, F-16s, F-15s as well. We just also heard a radio call from 2 military helicopters that were making their way up the Jersey Shore and headed into the area. One other thing worth noting, as we flew out here, we did notice Newark International Airport. That has been evacuated. All of the passengers and personnel from inside the airport currently standing outside on the access roads as well, and they are not being allowed into the building. We have also been told by officials over at Newark International Airport that the air traffic control tower at Kennedy Airport, that tower has been evacuated. Right now, none of the 3 local control towers, plus Teterboro's tower, none of those are operational. Those airports have all been essentially shut down, and right now TRACOM, which is the major regional air traffic control center, is trying to coordinate what is essentially a massive rescue effort as aircraft from all over the region try and get in here to lower Manhattan. As you look at these pictures, you see police boats, you see Coast Guard boats that have closed off the water area around lower Manhattan. Only authorized boats are allowed inside, and I should make a note about the highways as well. Last update I received from Metro Traffic was that the tunnels and bridges in Manhattan on the outbound side, some of those have been reopened, and that is to assist in getting some of the congestion out of Manhattan. Headed into Manhattan, everything remains shut down, and I can tell you that the roadways in New Jersey, we can actually take a look at the New Jersey Turnpike, are in one of 2 stages. They are either completely deserted or they are completely jammed. This is the Newark Bay extension, which obviously would normally take you over to the Holland Tunnel. Right now, the only traffic being allowed on that roadway is traffic that is trying to get out of somewhere. In other words, they're letting you go from Jersey City towards Newark to go away from New York, but that's a live look at the Newark Bay extension of the New Jersey Turnpike. So if you are at home, best recommendations, all the local roadways are stopped. You don't want to venture out of the house right now. If you are in Manhattan, and you're down in lower Manhattan, the police have made it possible now for you to at least get out and alleviate some of that congestion. That is one of the requests from the police department. All unnecessary personnel down in that area to please depart, obviously to help assist in the rescue.
All right, John, can you hear me, John? Can we talk to each other? John Del Giorno, can we talk to each other? We cannot. Okay. John Del Giorno keeping us apprised of the situation above from Newscopter 7. We want to tell you that all international flights into the United States have obviously not allowed to land in the United States since all airports are closed in the U.S. to incoming flights. LAX has now closed, and we're told the international flights into the United States are being requested to land somewhere in the nearest airport in Canada. Earlier this morning, Yasser Arafat reacted to this coordinated attack. We have a tape. We do not have that tape. Instead, we're going to go to David Ushery back in the newsroom, who has an update on some of the closures in Manhattan. David?
And actually, Bill, we have updated information from United Airlines on how else this tragedy continues to hit our area. United Airlines now, and this is by way of ABC News' Lisa Stark, who is their aviation correspondent and well-versed in these areas. Hearing from United Airlines Flight 93, it was a 757 leaving from Newark, headed to San Francisco. It took off at 8 this morning. It crashed near Pittsburgh, and we may have heard reports about that. United Airlines confirming that now. 38 passengers, 7 crew members. Also, United Airlines Flight 175 left from Boston, headed to LAX. It took off at 7:58, just before 8 o'clock. We don't know, United Airlines says, the location of that crash. That possibly was the Pentagon plane, but that has not been confirmed. But they know that plane went down, 56 passengers and a crew of 9. So this is words now coming from United Airlines. And we're going to take you back to the studio.
Are they all evacuated and locked down now?
UN's evacuated. The tunnels have been closed. The George Washington Bridge is open under security for emergency services coming in and people going out. We've shut down most of the mass transit. Grand Central is open under very tight security, but people who pass through the security have limited service to the northern suburbs, and we're doing the same thing on Long Island. But the important thing now is to provide as much help as quickly and as effectively to those whose lives are at risk or those who've been injured, and we're working with the city and federal officials to make sure that happens.
Do you believe that New York City is now under control?
New York City has been under attack, and until we get through this, we just have to continue to respond as strongly as we can.
And are you in a profile now? Are you in a position where you actually think there's a potential for more?
We just don't know. That's why we have to not only help those who have been injured, but also take every security step we can to try to prevent further incidents. We just don't know, Peter.
Okay. Governor Pataki, thank you very much. Governor George Pataki of New York.
You were listening to ABC News anchor Peter Jennings interviewing New York Governor George Pataki there.
That happened 8:45 or 8:50 this morning when an aircraft struck that tower. As we were looking at that, we saw the plane strike the second tower, and that second World Trade Center tower was struck. Just a short time after that, word came in that a plane had crashed into the Pentagon, and then by my estimate, about half an hour later, we received word that a plane had gone down in the area near Pittsburgh, and those are the 4 planes that we're trying to keep track of because of that.
2, it appears, from United Airlines and 2 from American Airlines, which, if in fact this is a terrorist act, those can be considered certainly 2 of the largest American-based airlines.
They are the number 1 and number 2 airlines in the U.S., and all airlines across the country have suspended their service at the request of the FAA. Planes are grounded throughout the U.S. and they've grounded planes in Canada as well, though Canadian airports were used initially as a safe harbor for some of the New York and Washington-bound flights to find a safe place to land as the officials were trying to get a sense of what they were dealing with.
Okay, now, just we've gotten the local perspective. Let's go now to Gary Anthony Ramsey, who is in our newsroom, with a look at the overall national situation. Gary?
Well, you know, at least one of the planes that hit the
as well, you know, in the rescue units, and it has actually quieted down with the ambulances moving into this area. Now, as for us, the media going into that area, we're not allowed to. We're being stopped just down on Broadway, and that's as far as we're going this morning, but we're certainly hear a lot of anecdotal stories coming out of here about what occurred today, and you hear a number of varied, in fact, somewhat wild stories. But it's almost as you guys have the best perspective of what is going on and what is developing right now. Main question for a lot of people out there is, how do I get home right now? And we really haven't heard down here what is going to occur. Everybody is just migrating north, and they actually come up to us as an information source for them. So come back and join us in just a little bit. We'll try to get more of an update for you.
Now, a little clarification about the 4 jetliners involved in this catastrophe. Seems like not harsh enough a word for what's happened. Right. 2 of them were United Airlines planes, and 2 were American Airlines, all of them bound for California. The 2 planes that hit the towers were both American Airlines.
One of the United planes we know went down 80 miles north of Pittsburgh. We don't know what any intended target might have been in that area. The second one, United plane, we have understood has crashed, but I believe we do not have a specific location on where that has taken place. So just beginning right there, we know that hundreds of lives have been lost simply on the jetliners that were hijacked this morning. 2 of the flights, I believe, originating from Newark, at least one of the others coming out of Boston.
We'd like to toss back to Melinda again because she may not be able to stay up there in that chopper.
Good morning. You're looking at live pictures from Air 11 of Lower Manhattan, where the World Trade Centers used to stand and have now been flattened. You see all the smoke which is coming up. We are hovering at about close to 2,000 feet, and those smoke fumes are way ahead of and way above us. I would say probably up to 4,000 feet at this point. The good news is that the wind is not blowing too strongly, which makes it less of a problem for firefighters. The bad news is the Red Hook section of Brooklyn has a lot of smoke hovering over it, as does the Lower Manhattan. You can see there's also a lot of firefighters working the ground right now. A lot of dark smoke down there. That is simply because the fire is rolling from place to place, and it's going to take quite some time, as we can all well imagine, to get this under control. See that building there? That building was smashed probably when the World Trade Centers came climbing down. So when they came crashing down, again, it smashed another building. You can see the water coming there, and that boat right in front of that is called the Firefighter. It pumps about 11,000 gallons of water per minute from the river into another pumper and then to another pumper. It's called a relay pump, and that's one way that they can get water onto this fire with or without water mains. We also have tugboats which have been called out this morning, or at least people who are coming out with their tugboats. Tugboats, many people do not realize, actually are able to pump water from the river itself and be able to feed some different hoses out there. So we believe that they are actually starting to hook up hoses, although we can't quite tell from this point, and help fight this fire using the river and the natural resources that we have around us. As you well know, air traffic control has shut down all air traffic over the United States. As I mentioned earlier, we are one of the only aircraft allowed to be up at this point. One of the other newscopters was actually asked to land. In fact, one of the New Jersey State Police was denied access into this area, and it is actually a rescue vehicle. We also have seen an Eagle F-15 fighter. They are at a much higher, or they fly at a much higher level than we do, so we can't really see them, but we did see one drop down low enough to be able to visualize it. So we do know that we have military protection flying over New York right now, and we did hear that a F-15 actually contacted a non-hostile helicopter out in the Princeton area and asked it to land. So that is definitely affecting air traffic in this area. Also, we know that New Jersey State Police and Teterboro are setting up a command post for the medevac flights. As you can well imagine, they are now going to have to start moving some of these people to the different areas. We do have New Jersey has a burn unit out here, and I'm sure many of these victims may be needing some of that treatment from the burn unit out in this area, as well as the hospitals in New York have been completely overwhelmed. St. Barnabas and probably New Jersey DMJ, they will all start picking up some of this extra injuries that are coming from this city. Now, again, what we see here is the smoke starting to lessen a little bit towards the bottom of Manhattan, but it is starting to go up higher, and there is still a very dark smoke plume coming up, which means fire. The white is traditionally steam. That's where they are getting water onto the fire. The black is smoke coming from fires, and as you can see, the fire is starting to roll to the east side of Manhattan, staying further from the west and going east, because that, of course, is how the wind is blowing, the slight wind that we do have. Good news is the wind is not very strong, which makes it less of a problem for firefighters, but of course it is very, very smoky for people in the southern part of Manhattan, as well as like the Red Hook section of Brooklyn or on the Gowanus. Keep your windows closed, turn your water off, stay out of the area. The firefighters really need the room to be able to do the work they need to do, as well as, of course, the other EMTs and rescue vehicles which are in the general area. Again, it's not a good idea to go down here. They do not need sightseers at this point. Really a good idea to stay away and try to stay off your cell phones as well. The firefighters and other emergency vehicles need to be able to get in contact with the people that they need to talk to. Again, I am just stunned by the height of this smoke plume. It goes up, I would say, maybe even now 4,500 feet, maybe 5,000 feet. It's hard to tell exactly, but it is a huge plume. You can see it for miles and miles away from Manhattan. We are hovering, obviously, on the other side. There's a 5-mile radius, which they are keeping us away from the buildings themselves, or what's left of the buildings themselves. And again, I personally witnessed the buildings collapse, and I was just stunned at the sight. I still can't get over the building suddenly being there and then suddenly not. It was just an awesome, awe-inspiring sight. I've never seen anything quite like it myself. And it's very strange to look over Manhattan right now, see the Empire State Building, and continue looking down it, and the World Trade Centers are completely and totally gone. But again, what we do know is that they are obviously still battling these blazes down here. There is
someone would do something like this. And all of the good and wonderful people that were affected by this, there's no reason for this, there's no excuse for this. And there's something like this is just something you never thought you would live to see.
I couldn't agree more, sir. Thank you for joining us. New York's Mayor Rudy Giuliani on what was to be an
Again, that was Mayor Giuliani on the phone just now, updating us, more or less just reacting to this event, which it's hard to react at this point and really give this the full weight of what's going on. I want to point out, though, we do have reports of deaths I want to go over very quickly for you. At Bellevue Hospital, 38 people reported dead, including 8 children, 4 police officers, 3 firefighters, and a pregnant woman. At St. Vincent's, 150 people injured, 60, 70 injured at Beth Israel. And again, high-ranking police officials requesting anonymity believe that the casualties will reach into the thousands.
And Mayor Giuliani was just imploring anyone who has any sort of hospital experience, if you can go somewhere to volunteer. They desperately need your services.
And need blood.
And they need blood desperately. So also, if you're a volunteer firefighter somewhere else, please come help out. You're desperately needed.
I want to go to Cindy Hsu in the newsroom if I can. Cindy.
Okay, Todd, I just wanted to update. We're now getting more information on those planes that went down so people can find out the exact numbers. We're talking about United Flight 93, which left Newark at 8:01 this morning, headed for San Francisco, had 38 passengers aboard, 2 pilots and 5 flight attendants. The airline said that flight has crashed near Pittsburgh. The second plane was United 175. It left Boston at 7:58 this morning. It was headed to Los Angeles. That aircraft had 56 passengers, 2 pilots, and 7 flight attendants. No word on where that plane went down, but United has confirmed that it was Flight 175 that did crash. American Airlines, we've been telling you, was the first plane that went into the World Trade Center. That was Flight 11 from Boston to LA, 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, 2 pilots. And then Flight 77, also American Airlines, from Washington Dulles to Los Angeles, 58 passengers.
We initially ran from the window in a panic, and then we just assembled ourselves, about 50 of us. And just went down the stairs.
A lot of people with you?
Many.
Chaos or organized?
Organized.
From what you saw, do you think most of the people on the 80th floor and below got out?
I would think so.
And how did you get from Lower Manhattan, World Trade Center, up to 67th and Columbus to be with us?
I walked.
What's the situation like in Lower Manhattan while you were walking?
Well, first off, when I left the building, I just thought that we were headed to some triage or something. And they kept directing us towards Broadway, a block and a half away. And I went to Broadway, and then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, and I thought that we were being shot at or something. And then a cloud of dust. You just couldn't outrun this cloud of dust. You just couldn't outrun it. So we just got engulfed in this cloud of dust, and then at that point, it was like a blizzard. It was like a blizzard. It was worse than a blizzard. I couldn't see anybody around me. We all ducked in. We all ducked in to a luncheonette, and I just couldn't stay in there. Everybody was trying to make phone calls, but it was even clouded with dust in the luncheonette. So I left, and I headed towards the seaport to head east, and that was when I just started walking north.
And you alerted your family, right, Bill? They
I
know
alerted
you're
my family
okay.
15 minutes ago.
And they
And that-
must have been incredibly relieved.
Yeah.
I don't know if we said that he is with Bank of America with the security division. And what were you doing at work today? I mean, just making sure that the building was safe?
No, I start work at 5:30 in the morning, so I had already been working a good 3 hours already.
Bill, describe that trip down the stairway.
It was actually in pretty good spirits. There were some people that had been above us that were visibly burned and injured, and there was a lot of move to the right, letting people... And then as we got further down, it was moved to the right because the firemen were coming up. And the firemen were suffering bad with all the oxygen tanks.
Bill, did you have any idea at that point what had happened?
Yes.
You knew that a plane...
I didn't know that it was a jet. I thought it was a single helicopter, and we thought that it was an accident.
And Bill, you said that when you came out, that's when the building exploded, but you were just out of the building when it collapsed.
I wasn't out a minute. I was not out a minute.
So that cloud that engulfed you was
the World
right
Trade
next to you.
Center.
How long then did it take you? It took you quite a while to get out of the building, right?
It took an hour to get out of the building. So it took an hour for the building to collapse. And then probably another 30 to 40 minutes before the second one collapsed.
So you were in that stairwell for an hour with other people. I imagine it was dark. There was
Smoke.
emergency lighting, smoke. What was that?
I didn't experience a lot of smoke inhalation. A lot of people who were covered up. A lot of asthmatics. I have asthma, but very mild. But a lot of asthmatics.
Bill, you left the building, but there were firefighters and other emergency personnel still in that building, right?
That's what's got me the most upset is the firemen and the people still in the building.
Did you?
That I know just didn't make it. I know they didn't make it. I don't know if it's true. I have heard stories as I walked up. I heard a lot of stories as I walked up. But I heard that people were jumping out of the building.
We have heard those same reports because of the heat and the smoke. We have heard those same reports. Bill, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I know you get there at 5 o'clock. How many people are going to be in those towers at 9 o'clock in the morning? Have most people arrived to work by then?
By 9 o'clock? Yeah. There's a lot of activity when I'm arriving, considering it's 5:30 in the morning. But there's a lot of activity from 6 o'clock on. There were vastly just thousands of people in that building.
Mm-hmm. Were you working at World Trade Center in '93?
Yes, I was.
Oh, gosh. Can you draw any comparisons to this?
I thought that was bad. That was bad enough.
But today is a day that you will never forget, we will never forget, and probably most of the United States will never forget. And Bill, what about friends? Do you know that all your coworkers, that your friends...
I don't know.
You don't know how they're doing?
I don't know. These are the first pictures I'm seeing of it right now.
If you want to comment as you look at them, please feel free.
Well, these pictures look like it's before the collapse. These pictures look kind of early.
It is before the collapse. But the two planes, Jim,
and
you were here, both planes have hit at this point.
Yes.
I remember that cop right there directing us right there. That police officer, I can recall telling us to head towards Broadway.
This is probably during your trip north as you started to make your way north out of the building, eventually ending up here.
This is as I'm coming out of the building because nothing has collapsed yet in these pictures. Nothing has collapsed yet in these pictures. That looks like right as we're coming out.
And this is the collapse, Bill, as you are 50 seconds out of the building.
That's it?
That's it. That's it. Bill, you're so lucky.
Oh, brother.
That is the Tower 2, second tower, collapsing this morning. Bill, I know it's very hard for you to watch this.
When you got in touch with your family, must have been mighty relieved.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy to get through on the phones. All the phones are just dead. And yeah, I was very relieved. It was a grueling walk up just thinking about... I couldn't get to a phone or anything.
Where did you finally call? How did you finally call?
When I buzzed my sister's door on 68th and Columbus.
And she was desperately worried about you, I'm sure.
I mean, I knew when the buzzer, when she answered the buzzer and I went, "It's me," I knew she was just going to go, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I don't feel confident that everybody I know got out of there.
Now, Bill, I see you have this mask around your neck. Did someone give you that as you were racing out?
Yes.
How were police and fire crews handling the situation out on the street?
Not panicked, obviously, but the urgency, and I just have never seen anything like it.
Diana mentioned the mask. Who did give you?
These were handed out to me probably about 10 minutes after I had escaped the collapse. Maybe I had gotten maybe about 4 blocks away, and frankly, I forgot that I even had it on. I was wondering why people were looking at me as I got into Midtown. Because as you got further and further up, you were getting further away from the people that were actually in there.
We have a live picture. Jim, that's a helicopter. Any idea if it's FBI or?
It is probably a helicopter to ferry people out of the scene to hospitals. There have been several going in and out. They are the only helicopters, they're only air vehicles that are being allowed in the area, so it's probably a medevac helicopter.
Just to add to that, in terms of getting people to hospitals, there has been an overflow, and the hospitals in Lower Manhattan can't handle it. So we had reports earlier that people are being taken by boat across the Hudson River to hospitals in New Jersey.
And there's a ban on the airspace of 5 miles around the World Trade Center.
Bill, I imagine the magnitude of this has really not sunk in with you yet.
No, I don't think so. I feel like it has, but I don't know what tomorrow brings. But I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yes, you are. You certainly are.
I'm wondering, like, when I'm going back to work, do I have a job? Do I have a company? And there are people that don't even know if they have lost loved ones yet.
And
so it's some trip.
It sure is. We are so very much hoping to be able to help people connect with their loved ones. And as we get phone numbers and ways that people can find out about family members, we will immediately pass those numbers on to you. You heard from Marie Young a few moments ago, and the corporation there is has a phone bank set up in New Jersey, and they're trying to get information.
Fire is still burning. It's clear that there's still a fire burning out of control on one wing of the Pentagon, where it was believed, once again, a commercial jetliner was crashed into the building, which is, of course, the not only the headquarters but the symbol of United States military might.
And sadly, but not unexpectedly, looking at that devastation, we have word now that there are fatalities at the Pentagon. We don't know how many. We don't know the extent of, who is critical or what, but there have been people who were killed so far.
Yes, as the day goes on, the casualty reports are going to be coming in, and it is not guessed that they will be anything hopeful at all. We do want to say this. We don't put the number up on the screen, so just listen to me. American Airlines out of Fort Worth, Texas, where its headquarters, says people who believe they have relatives on the 2 jets involved in today's terrorist attacks, and those are the 2 jets. They were the 2 American jets were the ones that struck the World Trade Center and knocked down. You can call this phone number for information, 1-800-245-0.
That President Bush is said to have made a couple of other comments. He said that freedom itself was attacked, freedom will be protected, and that the U.S. will hunt down and punish those responsible. Go ahead.
He also said that the U.S. military was on high alert at home and abroad.
Just to update you on the situation, we told you that there had been several international flights en route to the United States. The original plan from the FAA was to divert those to Canada. We now understand that they will be allowed to land in the U.S. The FAA is not saying why they're not going forward with their original plans to divert to Canada, and we don't have any information on the points of origin or the destinations of those 22 planes. NBC's Campbell Brown is standing by in Washington. Campbell?
Well, Matt, what we can tell you is that we do know the president now is at the Barksdale Air Force Base. That's in Shreveport, Louisiana, northern Louisiana. He flew there from Florida, where he was this morning, and it was interesting because in those early minutes, shortly after Air Force One took off from Florida, no one was told within the White House press corps where the president was, where he was going. Our information now is coming from what we call the travel pool. It is one network reporter who is on board the plane with the president. He did make a brief statement. We're waiting to get more on what he said when they landed at Barksdale Air Force Base. We're not sure whether or not he's going to stay there or that they will take the president somewhere else. There are a number of options. Obviously, there's a bunker
all used as terror weapons. The first was an American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767. It was going from Boston, supposed to go to Los Angeles. It crashed into the World Trade Center just before 9 o'clock this morning. That plane was carrying 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. Then American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757. It was going from Dulles Airport, which is outside of Washington, to Los Angeles. It crashed into the World Trade Center also. Both of these planes obviously hijacked. The plane was carrying 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. Then there was United Airlines Flight 93. That was a Boeing 757. It crashed southeast of Pittsburgh while en route from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco. That plane was carrying 38 passengers, 2 pilots, and 5 flight attendants. The fourth plane here is not clear where that plane has crashed. United Airlines Flight 175, a Boeing 767. The flight was bound from Boston to Los Angeles. It was carrying 56 passengers, 2 pilots, and 7 flight attendants. The airline would not say where that plane crashed. Diana.
Okay, Jim, we're going to go to Jeff Rawson right now, who is at World Trade Center, as close as he can be to that area. Jeff, tell us what's going on right now.
Bill, stay keyed up on the next hub as I keep losing you. 3, 2, 1. You're on. We apologize, having some technical difficulties getting cells down here because a good deal of our cell transmission come from the top of the World Trade Center. And you can see the black smoke continues. And to give you a live picture down Church Street, fire crews now walking back toward the scene. We have seen them all morning trying to walk away because what happens is every time a little piece of the building comes down, a huge black cloud comes at us, making it almost impossible to breathe or see anything in front of them. But now, at least for the past couple of minutes, it has been clear from this space back on Chambers in that area. So now they're walking back toward the World Trade Center. And as we keep letting you hear the personal stories, the survivor stories of exactly what happened inside the World Trade Center when that first plane went in, and of course the collapses since then, we're going to bring more of those to you now. Barry Jennings, you're on the 8th floor. You work for the City Housing Department. Explain to me the moment of impact.
Well, me and Mr. Hesh, the Corporation Counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. And I turned to Hesh. I said, this is it. We're dead. We're not going to make it out of here. I took a fire extinguisher and I bust the window out. That's when this gentleman here heard my cries for help. This gentleman right here, and he kept saying, stand by, somebody's coming to get you. They couldn't get to us for an hour because they couldn't find us.
You thought that was it?
I thought we're dead. I thought that was it. I started praying to Allah. I said, that's it. We're gone. It's over.
What was it like for you? You were inside there as well.
It was pandemonium. I mean, it was something like out of Bruce Willis' Die Hard movie. He was there and he was crying, and there was another gentleman crying and for help. We couldn't get to him. We tried to get through we went through the buildings. We were lost. Both staircases, the backside was completely blown away. There was no way to access us. We couldn't get to him. And finally, one of the fire department teams found him. But we didn't think they were going to make it.
Well, certainly you got out. Many others didn't. Of course, we don't have a number right now of fatalities or injuries, but I want to translate a story to you that another man told me. He was near the building. He was on the lobby level, near the shopping area, near the promenade. The elevator doors, he said to me, blew open. And when the doors opened, there was a man on fire inside that elevator. That is the kind of tragedy we are talking about here, and where the World Trade Center once stood here in New York City is no longer. At least not like we knew it. These men just embraced. This man is crying. It has been that traumatic.
I don't want to cry in the air, man, but I thought that was it. I thought I was dead. I'm thinking about my sons, my wife. It's too much.
And certainly, he echoes the statements of many others. We were speaking with a couple of officials earlier trying to get information. They said, stand back. We lost a bunch of guys today. It has certainly been a horrible... In fact, let me come around right here as this happens. They're now clearing the area.
Anybody else from Lincoln Center, you have to board the bus.
They're trying to evacuate the area because certainly they don't know what's going to happen next. And you can see in this picture from the corner of Reed and Church, people are wearing face masks. The air is almost unbreathable. And you can feel it in your mouth, and that's what's become so dangerous here, the unknown. We're staying on the scene. We're trying to gather the latest information for you as well. Certainly, I also want to tell you our personal experience when we were inside of it. You can come over and see our live truck covered in dust. We had to abandon it because, and this is what layers the entire street. You can see how much of it we're talking about here. When the building started to collapse, we had to abandon this truck and run into the nearest building. So many people had been evacuated already that it became difficult. Office of Emergency Management came with us with an axe, and there were about 3 of us. There were a couple reporters, then there were a couple people just walking in the area. Actually had to take the axe and bash in glass on a door into an off-track betting area so we can get in there for safety. We were safe and came out a couple of minutes later, but certainly pandemonium, chaos down here in the first moments of it. Just now are things beginning to calm down and police putting all of this together. Back to you.
Report that they are evacuating people back to the Lincoln Center area, which is way up where we are on the Upper West Side and that area of Manhattan. So they are trying to get people out of that area. Let's go right now live to John Del Giorno. He's in Newscopter 7. John, what can you tell us? John, can you hear us? John, you're on the air right now. If you can talk to us, we'd like to know what you can see.
I just want to relay the latest traffic and transit information regarding this disaster. If anybody is in Lower Manhattan and has to get out, obviously many of the roadways have been sealed off. What I can tell you so far is that the Port Authority crossings, and that will include the George Washington Bridge, the Lincoln Tunnel, and the Holland Tunnel, those crossings all remain closed in both directions. You can't get out of Manhattan, you can't get into Manhattan. Port Authority crossings will also include the Bayonne Bridge, the Goethals Bridge, and the Outer Bridge crossing. All of those crossings currently closed in both directions. On the east side of town, here is the rundown. The Queens Midtown Tunnel and the 59th Street Bridge are both open to Queens-bound traffic. So if you are in Manhattan and you have to get to Queens, the Queensboro Bridge and the Queens Midtown Tunnel are the 2 crossings that will do it. The Lower East River crossings being the Williamsburg, the Manhattan, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel all shut down in both directions, although I can tell you that the Manhattan Bridge, at least, I can confirm from what I'm able to see here, is open to pedestrian traffic. As far as the highways go, here's the scoop on Long Island. Right now, Long Island Expressway, Northern State Parkway, and the Southern State Parkway are all closed to westbound traffic at the Queens line. You cannot proceed into Queens on any of the major highways or parkways on Long Island. You can, however, drive eastbound out of town. In New Jersey Turnpike currently closed north of Interchange 11. That would be Woodbridge all the way up to the terminus. So the New Jersey Turnpike closed from Woodbridge up to the George Washington Bridge. That would include the Newark Bay extension. Also getting word of some scattered closures along Route 80 east of the Saddlebrook area. And again, that's just preventing traffic from getting bottlenecked at those Hudson River crossings. Again, the best advice, don't leave unless you absolutely have to. Stay in your homes today. The roadways that are not shut down in the entire area are gridlocked, so just stay home, stay put. If you're in Manhattan and you have to get out of Manhattan, the 59th Street Bridge and the Queens Midtown Tunnel are the 2 crossings currently open to motor vehicle traffic that will get you out of town.
Thank you, John. Stay home, stay put, and stay tuned to Eyewitness News. I understand that Mayor Giuliani is on the phone right now. Let us give a listen to see if, in fact, he is there.
Coming here from around the country to also assist us. But until then, which means until probably 2, 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon, our police department, our fire department, and our emergency people are stretched to the limit. And I'm sure we've also lost a significant number of them.
Now, you're reluctant, I assume, to put any other name attached to the casualties except significant. Do you believe it's hundreds or thousands?
I really don't. I really don't want to say right now, Peter. I think it's going to be a horrible number. I saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. I saw some of the firefighters who I know going into the building. And we were in a building in which we were trapped for about 10, 15 minutes.
Are you talking about did you go immediately to the Office of Emergency Management?
No, I went down to the scene and we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management. And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. And it did collapse before we could actually get out of the building. So we were trapped in the building for 10, 15 minutes and finally found an exit and got out, walked north, and took a lot of people with us.
My question is, the Office of Emergency Management headquarters, into which you put enormous effort for coordination in a disaster like this, has it been damaged? Is it still operating? It's gone?
It's been damaged. I don't know how badly. And right now, that whole area of Manhattan, including the police department, which is another area we would operate from, City Hall, is another area we would operate from, have been closed off. So we've moved to to a secure location in Midtown Manhattan where we're operating city government.
Is it fair to say, do you think, that all of your drills for dealing with terrorism and disaster are going according to plan, or has this been of such of magnitude that we've just all been caught totally off balance?
Oh, there's no question we were all caught totally off balance. No one could possibly expect large airplanes to crash into the World Trade Center the way this happened. I think, having said that, as I watched what the police officers and the firefighters were doing, I think they're going to save the maximum number of lives you could possibly save in a situation like this. I mean, the emergency efforts that they've been going through over the last 2.5 hours are nothing short of inspiring.
And when the National Guard comes in to say, did you say to take over or offer some relief, what can the National Guard do that you cannot do at a city level?
Well, at this point, what they can do is relieve men who are going to be exhausted physically and emotionally.
Now, just if you would, because I know how busy you are, just give us some sense of what you thought at the time about all this.
I thought that I would never live to see anything like this. I didn't think anything like this was possible. When I first arrived there, I rushed down there from Midtown Manhattan, and I saw the first building that had been crashed open. And when you look at it, it takes you a minute to really comprehend that this is actually happening. And to see people jumping from the top of the World Trade Center. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a nightmare that's worse than this.
Mr. Mayor, one last question. You said you never believed you'd live to see anything like this, and yet in the past you've been one of the leaders in preparing for just this
Absolutely.
Kind of thing to happen.
Yeah, but you keep you prepare for the worst, but you don't believe that it'll happen, and this is the worst. And I can only say that I thank God for the police department and the fire department that we have, because this would be much, much worse. And I'm also very proud of the people of the city. We evacuated Lower Manhattan with literally thousands of people, walked along with them, and they conducted themselves really, really, really well.
Well, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for communicating all this.
The Mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, in his last term.
Peter Jennings interviewing Mayor Giuliani, as he said, needless to say, the Mayor of New York. A couple of things that we've got a lot of interviews from witnesses and victims, but we have to just take a moment, because Bill Heitman was here. He was on the 80-something floor, and he managed to get out, and he mentioned that as he was coming down, there were firefighters going up. And he was out of that building 1 minute before it came down. And the reason that he was crying on the set is because he knows that a full contingent of firefighters, New York's bravest, may have perished. Yeah.
Bill, do you know how many firefighters were going up as you all were coming down?
I passed during the course of that hour. Well, in the first half hour, we didn't see any firefighters because we were so far up. But as we started getting down into like the 40s and the 30s, more and more, I would say I passed probably 30 or more firefighters.
Jim, that's not the only stairwell that they would have been going up, is that right?
Absolutely not. And the other thing to remember is this is what firemen do. They do this time and again. We all cover these minor fires, relatively minor fires, where firefighters, without a second thought, charge into the flames to rescue people. They didn't have any shortage of volunteers to go up into that building, because that is what they are trained to do, to save people's lives. And that's why Bill saw so many of them, and you have to believe so many of them did not get out of that building.
And Jim, it would be mostly those companies that are located down in Lower Manhattan that would have initially responded to that blaze, right?
Probably, yeah. Certainly the ones that Bill saw going up as he was coming down, those were neighborhood firemen who are trained to go up into the World Trade Center specifically to rescue people.
Bill and Diana, one of the things that the mayor said in that interview with Peter Jennings is that city government has been moved. Lower Manhattan is so debris-strewn at this point in time that the Office of Emergency Planning was damaged, and that City Hall had to be evacuated, and that the government has moved to a secure location in Midtown. Roz, let me interrupt, because we've got to go to Nina Pineda, who is out live right now. She is in Lower Manhattan, I believe. Nina, can we go to Nina? Nina?
You know what? It's a terrorist attack. We are still here on the financial district. There is debris still falling. People are leaving in a flood from the financial district. Their buildings have been shut down. They've been asked to leave. We are a block away from New York's downtown hospital, where they are busing in police. Police are busing in doctors, nurses, anybody with a medical background is being asked to try to come to some of these area hospitals as well as some of the outlying hospitals. We're also hearing from some of the medical personnel there by downtown hospital that they are in desperate need of blood. They haven't given us a word about where people can go and donate blood, but that is the situation at the hospital. Here where we are on Pearl Street at Beekman, the ladies that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby. They report they believe there was a bomb in the lobby. Tell me what you saw again.
What I saw was debris all over. It wasn't even a lobby. And even the turnstile was burnt and it was sticking up. And they just told us to run. And we went through the Marriott and we came out through the financial system and they just told us to run. And we ran. Debris was coming from all over the place. And then when you turned around, you saw casualties falling out the window. And then you saw the airplane on the World Trade Center 2 hit directly towards that building. That's
and
it.
You said, ma'am, that you thought that the plane was there to help you.
I thought it was. I thought it was.
And when you were coming down, you said there was no lobby. Can you describe to us the other victims at that time?
There was a woman there. Her face was just blown, just off. She was laying there. My girlfriend, she had no shoes on. So it was all the stairs. I had to carry her on my back all the way down the stairs, carry her through the lobby. So I'm running. I didn't even feel her. I was so scared. There were people that got caught up in the floor. They were jumping out the windows. I mean, they were just laying on the floor. And as we were coming out, we passed the lobby. There was no lobby. So I believe the bomb hit the lobby first. And a couple of seconds then the first plane hit. As we got out, the second plane hit. And that went right into the building. And people were jumping underneath cars. People were running. And some of us didn't make it.
As you left the World Trade, did you see were other people running behind you?
Yes. Oh, yes. People were running, tripping over each other, running, going crazy. It was horrible. Yes. It was horrible.
And you left several friends. There were several friends of yours?
I lost my girlfriend. I had no shoes. I had to carry her. We got separated when the second plane hit because everybody just, a mad rush, screaming. I just screamed and I lost her. I can't find her now. I don't know where she's at.
I'm asthmatic and I had to get the mask.
Plenty of people here that left the World Trade Center. We've interviewed several as they were leaving. Excuse me. A lot of people here leaving the Wall Street area are covering their faces with masks. These are just some of the witness accounts from people that were right at ground zero when the plane hit both of the World Trade Centers, and then they believed there was a bomb in the lobby because they could not get out the lobby area, and the lobby area was burned. That is the latest from here in the Financial District. We'll check back with you in a few minutes. I'm Nina Pineda, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Nina. We have one update. The President of the United States has been evacuated to a military base in Shreveport, Louisiana. And that's all we know at this point. As soon as we hear more, we will share it with you. Absolutely. And you are watching ABC 7 right now as we continue to cover the attack on the Twin Trade Towers, an attack that has hit both here in New York and in Washington, D.C. And Jim Dolan is going to recap for the next 30 seconds or so about exactly what happened starting at 9 o'clock this morning.
It was actually just a few minutes before 9 o'clock, Diana. The first plane, an American Flight 11, Boeing 767, 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, hit the World Trade Center, again, approximately 8:50. At 9 o'clock, the second plane, an American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757 with 58 passengers on board, hit the second tower. Again, that was approximately 9 o'clock. About 9:40, a plane crashed into the Pentagon. That hit the wires about 9:43. We haven't talked much about that case. It was a devastating hit. A portion of one side of the 5-sided structure known as the Pentagon collapsed when the plane struck it. At 10:09 a.m., the South World Trade Tower collapsed. And then about 10 minutes later, a portion of the Pentagon collapsed as well. And that is where we stand at this hour.
Okay. And here's a few things, Jim, that we really don't know at this point. We do not know who is responsible for this attack, though there has been some speculation. We do not know the extent of the casualties, the injuries to the rescue personnel that were on the scene. We have seen Mayor Giuliani, and we understand that he will be talking to us shortly at some sort of news conference. He has been on the air with Peter Jennings, and we have heard on the air at ABC Governor Pataki. Obviously, there is much going on. This rescue operation trying to help people at hospitals down at the World Trade Center area still ongoing at this hour. Just a moment ago, I said that the president had been taken to Louisiana, and we know for a fact now that he is at Berks Barksdale Air Force Base, the President of the United States at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. And Roz, we're going to go now to Andy Field, who has more information about what is happening in Washington. Andy.
Hi, Diana and Roz here. This is an unbelievable day here in Washington. There was a sense of panic across the city here. But the most important thing, the leader of the free world is not here right now. He is in Louisiana at an Air Force base, as you mentioned. He was on his way back to Washington on Air Force One when he got word of the attack. Reporters on the plane were told not to say where they were, not to use their cell phones, not to say anything until they got on the ground for fear that the president would be attacked as well. He has actually issued a statement. I don't know if you've put this on the air yet, but he said that, make no mistake, the U.S. will hunt down and punish those responsible for this attack. Now, the president, we're not certain whether he's coming back to Washington. The Secret Service has told us that there are safer places for him to be, that they have a plan in place for something just like this if it ever happened. And so the president may be flying from Louisiana to other locations to make sure that whoever might want to target him has less of a chance to do that. Also, on Capitol Hill, we're told that the leaders of the House and Senate were also evacuated and taken to secure locations. Vice President Cheney, the president's cabinet, as well as former presidents Bush, Carter, Ford, and Clinton have all been secured and sequestered. Now let's go to what happened here earlier this morning, the attack on the Pentagon here. We are told that it is or was a passenger plane, that it flew low over the Pentagon parking lot, clipping light poles on its way to the outer ring of the Pentagon. There are 5 rings of the Pentagon, and actually plowed through the outer ring all the way into the A ring of the Pentagon, causing massive amounts of damage. In fact, we are told that the building walls have collapsed. Their firefighters have been on the scene all day long here trying to put out the fire, and the smoke is still visible from many parts of Washington here. You can see also at the White House, the Secret Service has surrounded the area there. They have evacuated that building, evacuated all federal buildings in the city. Most of official Washington has been sent home. The schools in the suburbs and in the city, many of them have closed today here. The banks have closed. The whole city is on the highest state of alert for any further terrorist attacks here in the city. Now, we're not told when the president is going to get back. Also, when people were evacuated here today, many did not want to take the metro system, the underground railroad that spreads out to all the different suburbs here. And they were seen walking home, a traffic jam, an immense traffic jam, because many of the major arteries, the north-south roads, Route 95 and Route 395 that go past the Pentagon, they were all closed and evacuated.
Andy Field, this is Roz Abrams in New York. Can you hear me?
Yes, Roz.
Okay, have you had a chance to talk to anyone who was in the Pentagon or in the State Department or at any of these locations when the bombs went off?
I have not personally talked to anyone at the Pentagon. We did talk to someone at the State Department earlier today. There was a rumor that there was a car bomb that might have exploded at the State Department. From everything we've heard, that is not true. It may be that a car bomb was found, but as far as we know, nothing has exploded there. And you can hear some of the sirens in the background here. Emergency vehicles are combing the city here. Certainly nothing as horrendous as what happened in New York here, but they're prepared for even more here, and they want to make sure that the terrorists don't have a chance to strike again.
Andy, this is Diana in New York. I imagine that when this happened, you all were just getting word of the World Trade Tower incident happening, the plane having flown into the World Trade Tower. The second one happened. Was there what was going through your mind as you're watching that? Was there immediate concern that something could happen in Washington?
It was horrendous, as I'm sure many people in New York felt the very first plane might have been an accident. They were horrified to see that explosion. When it was the second one, everyone in Washington went on high alert. As a matter of fact, I was on my way back over to the White House to get my White House pass renewed. People who cover the White House regularly get a permanent White House pass to get in there. As I was going over there, the Secret Service brushed us away.
Andy, I don't mean to cut you off, but the president spoke from Barksdale Air Force Base just a few moments ago, and we've had a chance to turn that around. So we want to share with our viewers what Mr. Bush had to say regarding the events of this day.
Okay.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward. And freedom will be defended. I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks. Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. I've been in regular contact with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Team, and my cabinet. We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. Our military at home and around the world is on high alert status, and we have taken the necessary security precautions to continue the functions of your government. We have been in touch with the leaders of Congress and with world leaders to assure them that we will do whatever is necessary to protect America and Americans. I ask the American people to join me in saying a thanks for all the folks who have been fighting hard to rescue our fellow citizens, and to join me in saying a prayer for the victims and their families. The resolve of our great nation.
You were just listening to a statement from the President of the United States. He is at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. He opened it by saying freedom itself has been attacked today, but he was ever the Commander-in-Chief, very much in control, very reassuring in his statements and his remarks about the government is okay. Yes, and there is going to be much to do ahead. You're looking at a live picture of Lower Manhattan right now, and as we've said earlier, that they are trying to evacuate, trying to get people out of that area as far as the Upper West Side. They're trying to pull people out of that area.
Federal authorities, what did they tell you about the potential numbers of dead down at the scene?
The numbers could be as high as 50,000.
50,000? Right.
That's staggering.
See, that's a staggering number. Where does that number come from?
Well, what happens is when those buildings started tumbling and knocking out some of the gas lines down there, the people in the other buildings could have been also engulfed. You know, you don't have to be at ground zero to be affected by this.
Here's what we're trying to understand in the press. We have not heard or seen that many bodies come out. Bellevue Hospital, which is the level 1 trauma center in the city, the largest one, they've only seen about 2 or 3 DOA. Why is that?
Let me tell you something interesting. We know that Bellevue is one of the most famous hospitals today that would deal with a disaster. Are you aware that in a situation like this, had there been a biological entity, their hazmat teams would have been there. They would only be able to handle close to 15 bodies a day. And in a situation like this where there are 10 to 50,000 bodies.
Paul, we have to move on, and we have some new late information here.
John Slattery, as we said, is standing by for us right now in Lower Manhattan. John, can you hear us right now? Can you come in and describe what's going on? John Slattery? Okay, we're waiting for John Slattery to give us some information. He is down in Lower Manhattan. What a scene there. As you can see the photographs right now. You see this amazing scene of people running, rescue efforts underway, and we certainly are going to give you some of those reports as we have them available. But right now we want to go to Michael O'Looney. Michael, you can sort of give us a little bit of a timeline here as to what has happened over the years.
Well, let's start with today, this horrible day. It all began at about 8:45 a.m. when a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. That plane, American Airlines Flight 11, had been hijacked from Boston. It was headed to Los Angeles. About 20 minutes after that first crash, at about 9:15, another plane smashed into the second World Trade Center tower, Tower 2. And roughly 30 minutes later, at 9:45, an airplane crashed near the Pentagon, just outside of Washington, D.C. Then around 10:05, the first tower of the World Trade Center collapsed to the ground. At about the same time, a large plane crashed into western Pennsylvania, about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. It was a United Airlines flight from Newark headed to San Francisco. About 20 minutes later, around 10:20, the State Department was evacuated due to reports of a car bomb. And at about 10:28, the second tower of the World Trade Center also collapsed. About 8 minutes later, there was a fourth explosion at the World Trade Center. Since then, the White House, the State Department, the United Nations, and the Sears Tower in Chicago have all been evacuated. Terrorist precautions have been put into effect all around the country. New York City is on full terrorism alert. Monuments and museums in Washington, D.C. are closed. All air traffic has been halted nationwide for the first time in history. Here in New York, today's primary elections for mayor have been canceled, and all of the financial markets have been shut down. Subway service in New York is stopped, as well as most other mass transit.
Michael, thank you so much for all of that. Michael is staying here with us. We're going to go back to John Slattery, downtown live for us, one of our many reporters.
Is still billowing from the area of the World Trade Center, just a few blocks below me. And what we've heard in the last few minutes is that there's now some concern about World Trade number 7, which ironically is where the mayor's office of emergency management has a bunker centered. Apparently there's some concern about the facade there. They're not occupying that location at this time from what we hear. All of the west side of Lower Manhattan is closed down to only emergency vehicles right now, as it has been since just before 9 o'clock this morning. When the towers came down, you can imagine the chaos and the thousands of people that were evacuated, not only from the World Trade Center, but also from the surrounding office buildings, including the huge World Financial Center, which is just off to the right. One man came out of there. He was running up the street. He was trying to get ahead of the billowing smoke. And at one point he just stopped and he started crying. And I said, "Sir, are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, I'm okay." But he said, "I'm worried about my wife." And I said, "Where is she?" And he said, "She works in the World Financial Center." I said, "Well, you don't have to worry because that building has not been affected and everybody has gotten out of there okay." But he was just one of thousands of people who were expressing concern about friends and loved ones who live or work in the area and who may have already have gone.
To look at, but I'm sure that this administration and the Congress will devote all their efforts to making sure not only that the people who perpetrated it are punished, but also that it never happens again.
Senator, is it too early to speculate on whether or not we're going to need protective air cover over the nation's capital and some of our more critical areas?
I don't know. I do know that average citizens are going to find it a much more complicated process going to an airport and getting onto an airplane. That'll be one of the first, obviously, one of the first and necessary evaluations that are needed, because I think it's pretty clear now that these planes were hijacked, and how they were able to do that in the case of at least 4 airplanes is going to be a subject of great interest and perhaps some controversy, because there's been this issue of security at airports for a long period of time. How much inconvenience versus how much security, which has been one debate that's been in Congress and in other areas of government as well. So I think that rather than attacking it from having air cover over the Capitol, perhaps we ought to devote our efforts to going places where these acts of terror originate. That would probably be much more effective and cost-effective as well.
Senator, we're still dealing, as I say, with the initial stages of shock, but in fact, it is hard to overstate the magnitude of all of this or the continuing effect that it will have on the business of this nation.
Well, I don't. There's never been anything like this in our lifetime. Pearl Harbor was a horrible and dastardly deed, and I don't like to compare it to Pearl Harbor. But this is unprecedented in its scope and frankly, its efficiency.
Senator John McCain, thank you very much for being with us today.
Tom.
Thank you. Under these very difficult circumstances. It's also worth pointing out that in Pearl Harbor, it was a military attack on a military installation. This was an attack by terrorists using innocent American civilians, for the most part, in hijacked airliners directed at targets filled with civilians, with the exception of the Pentagon, obviously. Let's go to NBC's Robert Hager now for an update. 4 planes hijacked today, Bob, 2 United, 2 American. Bring us up to date.
With a total toll just in the airplanes, so thousands dead presumably on the ground, but just in the airplanes, 266 dead. As you said, 2 American planes, 2 United planes. 2 of those planes were taking off from Boston, 1 from Newark, and 1 from Washington Dulles. 2 went into the World Trade Center buildings, 1 went into the Pentagon, and 1 crashed in rural Pennsylvania with no idea where that one was being hijacked to. At last report, and this report was about 40 minutes ago, there were now only 50 planes left in the air, 50 commercial flights over domestic U.S. airspace. So that is saying no new flights were being allowed to take off, haven't since 9:30 Eastern Time this morning. The planes that were already in the air were allowed to continue on. There were only 50 of those still in the air. They were mostly about 20 minutes away from airports, so presumably almost all of those should have landed by now. There were also 22 international flights still in the air, heading here. Initially, the word was they were going to be diverted to Canada, and then the decision was made that that would be just too hard for Canadians to handle, and so those 22 flights were going to be allowed to land in the U.S. So far, we don't know of any of them landing. But this is a very important point. The FAA knew of no problems with any of those 50 planes still in the air in the U.S. or 22 in international airspace bound here. So that would seem to indicate that the problems are over in terms of these hijackings. Just to run the flights down very quickly, the first was an American airliner, Boston to Los Angeles. There were 92 killed on board that one. It went into the World Trade Center. That was the first event. Then there was a United plane leaving from Boston. 65 were killed on it. It also went into the World Trade Center. It, too, as the American plane before it, was supposed to have been bound Boston to Los Angeles. Then there was an American airliner leaving from Dulles Airport bound for Los Angeles, 64 aboard, and it crashed into the Pentagon. And finally, a United flight leaving Newark Airport bound for San Francisco. It went into rural Pennsylvania, so we don't know what its intended target was. Now, in terms of what Senator McCain was talking about, when you think of a plane being hijacked, you've got to get the hijackers aboard, and you have to get some sort of deathly weapon aboard, like a gun or some explosives. And there are two ways to do that. Either they go through passenger screening and manage to sneak through passenger screening without getting caught, or you get behind the doors somehow and sneak those people aboard behind passenger screening as though they were an airport employee. There have been investigations done on both those things. The FAA tests them a lot with plainclothes people to see if they get through, and every time they do it, a sizable percentage do get through passenger screening with mock weapons or mock explosives. And the same thing on the employees behind the lines. A sizable number do manage to get through the doors. So we'll be seeing in coming days what it was that led to all this. Tom?
Bob, any indication from the FAA of radio traffic indicating that there was a hijacking underway?
No, what it is in the cockpit, presuming that an armed person, in the course of a hijacking, an armed person or somebody with explosives has broken into the cockpit, and the pilot, therefore, cannot say it over the open radio because the hijacker would take action against the pilot. So there's a button that you push, and the button sends out a code, and it tells the appropriate air traffic controllers, and word is flashed to Washington immediately that there's a hijacking in progress. So one could presume that that happened in all four of these flights. Of course, we don't know at the moment, but it certainly must have. Then you wonder, too, because the targets were hit so precisely, is that somebody standing behind a pilot and saying, okay, now fly this right into a World Trade Center tower? Or is it an experienced pilot, the hijacker himself, who gets the pilot out of his seat and takes over at the controls to guide it in at the last minute? We don't know, of course. Yeah.
All right, thanks very much. NBC's Robert Hager, who will be monitoring the airline part of all of this. The four hijacked airliners, in effect, became guided missiles in the hands of terrorists who hijacked the plane. They took innocent people to death with them, 266 altogether. President Bush is at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana at this time. We're told other senior members of the Bush administration are in secure positions. There's code red at the Capitol right now. House Speaker Dennis Hastert was removed to a secure position. All financial markets have been closed down. All national monuments have been evacuated. Across America, in places like Minneapolis, Kentucky, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, a number of critical installations have been closed down as well. This country, the most powerful in the world, has been, in effect, semi-immobilized today by these terrorist attacks. And we can only hope that they are now all over with. When we heard this morning at 8:42 that the World Trade Center had been attacked, we thought that that was a single, a solitary and horrifying event. Not too long after that, the second one was hit. And then NBC's Jim Miklaszewski here on NBC said an explosion was felt at the Pentagon, and that was a plane that went into the Pentagon, another airliner near the Hillip pad there. It fortunately was on the far side of the building, from the most critical offices housing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Intelligence Center, and of course Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, who at first did not want to evacuate the building, and then he was persuaded that that was in the best national interest of this country to do just that. And then, of course, we had the situation in Pennsylvania where a United airliner crashed into the ground. It, too, had been hijacked. James Lee Witt is the former head of the Federal Emergency Administration in the Clinton administration. He was well known during his tenure there because there were so many natural disasters around the country. Mr. Witt, what is FEMA doing at this hour?
Well, Tom, I'm sure that they've already activated the Operations Center and also talking to the City of New York Emergency Management and Governor Pataki's office in putting together whatever resources they can to support their efforts in meeting that immediate need. And I'm sure they're probably activating some search and rescue teams. Probably. Go ahead.
I know, James, from our own experiences together, that you had lots of contingency plans for tornadoes and for hurricanes, those kinds of natural disasters. What did you have in planning at FEMA for a terrorist attack?
Well, of course, you know, after the Oklahoma City bombing, Tom, we've worked very hard in putting together a very strong federal response plan in which they have continued to work on, particularly adding the terrorist component to that, and working with the FBI, who will have the lead on this in crisis management. And, of course, FEMA has a consequence management, and I'm sure Director Albaugh and all the staff there are liaisoning with the FBI at this time.
Was that something that you prepared on your own, or did you do that in close coordination and get regular updates from the FBI?
We worked very closely with the FBI, and if there was a threat, then they would notify us and work very closely with them, and even as far as having someone in their operations center.
When you look at those pictures of what happened in lower Manhattan, in the canyons of this great city with those two 110-story buildings coming down, you can only imagine what the carnage must be on the ground.
It's probably horrifying, and I saw earlier said it looked like a war zone, and I'm sure it does, and just looking at the pictures. But, you know, there's so many firefighters and police officers that were probably up at the base of that building, probably in that building, trying to get people out, and I'm sure that, you know, the loss is going to be tremendous, and the pain is going to be felt for a long, long time.
Jimmy Lee Witt, thank you very much. By the way, Afghanistan's ruling Taliban movement on Tuesday said that Osama bin Laden, they're closely allied with him, was not responsible for the attacks on the United States. What happened in the United States, according to the Taliban, was not a job of ordinary people. It could have been the work of governments. Osama bin Laden cannot do this kind of work. Neither can we, a Taliban spokesman said from the southern city of Kandahar. The Taliban, of course, a very militant and very conservative Islamic organization and widely believed to be harboring Osama bin Laden, a very wealthy Saudi dissident who has a very sophisticated apparatus at his disposal. He has not been seen for some time, although he does appear from time to time on some Islamic media outlets. One reporter who has been in touch with him said that 3 weeks ago he said an attack was planned on the United States, but that, of course, has not yet been verified. He is, at the moment, I think fair to say, at the top of everyone's list of suspects. But as we have learned on these occasions in times past, it's often not the best thing to do to make a premature judgment. There is the picture that we have often seen of him as he has declared a holy war against the United States. Let's go to General Norman Schwarzkopf now, who had the Southern Command and, of course, commanded the forces during the Persian Gulf War. General Schwarzkopf, I've been trying to review in my own mind the incidents in which the United States has been a conspicuous participant or absent in the past month or so. We lost a spy plane over southern Iraq. We've stepped up pressure on southern Iraq. Obviously, in the Middle East, in the ongoing dispute between the Palestinians and the Israelis, there's a great feeling that the United States is siding only with the Israelis. The war in Sudan goes on, but we've not taken an active role there. Are there any other signs on your radar screen that would indicate that this kind of thing was likely to happen?
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is that most of the Middle East countries consider the United States to be, you know, the main source of support for Israel. It isn't isolated just in certain states. And, you know, any one of those people, if you got them aside and asked them truthfully, they would tell you that they were not in favor of our policies with regard to Israel.
So do you think that that probably was the cause of all this continual escalation that has been going on between Palestine and Israel? And there's been an absence of participation, I think that it's fair to say, on the part of this administration and all of that.
Well, I think that's kind of speculation at this time. I certainly think that you know, the reason why the United States is hated in so many places in the Middle East is with regard to the support of the state of Israel. And as a matter of fact, they'll openly state that if Israel had not had the support of the United States, it wouldn't exist today. So they go so far as to say that.
There are people, many people, still trapped.
When you and I were talking earlier, we were commenting on the sophistication of this attack and the complexity of that. Doesn't that stun you some?
It really does. I mean, just what was mentioned by, you know, by Robert Hager, the fact that undoubtedly, you know, I can't see any U.S. commercial airline pilot flying their plane directly into an obstacle like that. Undoubtedly, there was, you know, somebody at the controls that was able to guide the plane there. That in itself is kind of scary. I told you earlier about the fact that it bothers me that with all the devices we have against hijackers, that hijacking can still take place on this scale and organized in that fashion. That causes me concern. I certainly agree with what Senator McCain said about the fact that, you know, many years ago, we abandoned human intelligence. The attitude was that only bad guys have spies, and good guys don't need spies, and we put satellites in the air, and we put a huge amount of investment into technical intelligence. At the same time, we dismantled human intelligence. I don't know what the status of that is today, but we damn sure need to get somebody inside these organizations. I would tell you that...
General, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment because we're looking at some scenes that we have not yet had an opportunity to see. It does look like a nuclear winter in lower Manhattan. It is one of the most vital areas anywhere in the world, obviously. The home of the financial markets, the World Trade Center, lots of residences. There's been a real revival down there in recent years, and it has a great gray pall of dust and smoke and debris, and of course, overlaying all of that is the psychological effect of knowing that there could be a casualty list in terms of fatalities that could go into the thousands.
Yeah. I mean, Pearl Harbor, we lost 2,400. And, you know, when you hear the numbers today, it's hard to believe that we're not going to greatly exceed that number.
And as I pointed out earlier, in Pearl Harbor, it was a military attacking a military installation. This was the use of innocent people in commercial airliners to attack other innocent people in New York. There was one military target, obviously the Pentagon. You can see, if you're looking at this with me, General, the extent of the damage in lower Manhattan.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And you know, it's the natural inclination is, okay, we got to hit somebody back. And in this case, what's going to, you know, be even more frustration to the national psyche is you can't hit back. You know, you don't, who you're going to hit at this stage of the game.
Yeah. Thank you very much, General Norman Schwarzkopf. We'll ask you to stand by. We'll be coming back to you. This is as effective as a bomb being dropped there. There were two bombs in effect. Commercial airliners flown into those two buildings, and they came down. We presume because of the initial explosion, there may have been secondary explosions as well that were detonated in the building by these terrorists. Robert Harper was one of those who was in the area when all of this occurred. Mr. Harper?
Yes. Tom, how are you today?
Tell me where you were when the first plane flew into the first building.
I was down below the World Trade Centers. I was arriving at work just a little late, and the first plane had crashed into the building, so there were many people, you know, sort of standing around. There were EMS workers running around as well, and you could see the second plane coming around and everyone sort of pointing up, and then that second plane just crashed into the building.
And what about people who were trying to get out of the building? We had one report of bodies falling through the air and people jumping from windows. Did you see any of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was a very traumatic day, I think, having seen that, because where the initial explosion was, there was a lot of black smoke coming out of around, I believe it was around the 78th floor, and you saw people jumping for their lives out of the 78th floor of the World Trade Center. smoke everywhere, fire everywhere, and people were continuing to jump out of the 78th floor. So people began to run away because once the second explosion happened, the debris that was caused by that began to fall everywhere, and everybody just started running toward the mayor's office. You know, I began to run toward the Woolworth building, which was close to that, and then as I got closer to that, I realized if, you know, the top of the World Trade Center hit the Woolworth building, that building too would be affected, and it might also fall down.
Did you have a sense right away that these buildings could come down?
Not initially. For about 15 minutes or so, people only thought, you know, they couldn't really tell what had happened, and only after the second plane hit did people realize that, you know, this is probably something that was orchestrated. And so then people initially who had, you know, been trying to go back to the scene and try to help people realized that another plane had hit the building, and that's when people said, look, this can't have been a mistake.
Where are you now?
I'm outside of the emergency room at Presbyterian Hospital. I've just been released for smoke inhalation. I've been in the hospital there. They rushed me to the hospital, you know, not too long after that because the black soot and everything that was associated with the building, I mean, heavy black smoke engulfed the entire financial district. You know, from 9 o'clock onward, and we were sitting on the side of the road. EMS workers were there administering oxygen to people, thinking that everything was okay. And then as they began to realize that the explosion might have caused so much trauma to both the World Trade Center that they would fall, then everybody just began to run because they saw that the building itself was actually going to fall. So all of the people that had gone to help out were then put in, you know, double danger because you were then running, and the building literally came and fell, you know, over the entire financial district area. It was a complete nightmare. Black smoke everywhere. People were running toward the Brooklyn Bridge, running, you know, away from the mayor's office, afraid that the falling part of the World Trade Center would hit other buildings, and that would, you know, cause a topple effect.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harper, and thank God you're okay, and I hope that you'll be able to deal with all of this. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a real mess, you know, and coming back in the ambulance, you know, somebody said, you know, one of the things that they remembered, you know, thinking about is the date today is September 11th, so 9/11. So, you know, it's something that can't really go without notice, is that this was completely planned, completely orchestrated. You know, whoever did this has been planning this obviously for a very long time.
Thank you very much, Robert Harper, who was one of the survivors who was just a little bit late to work this morning, but then got caught in the devastating attack on the Twin Trade Towers. It's hard for me to overstate to people who are unfamiliar with New York just how dynamic that area is in terms of people coming and going. The two towers are 110 stories high, or they were. 20 to 50,000 people would work in them at any one time. It's just a few blocks from the stock market and from many of the principal banks in America, to say nothing of residential areas. And we will not know for some time what the death toll is there, to say nothing of the number of people who have been injured, so many of them with burns. Let's go to Washington now, and NBC's Washington Bureau Chief, Tim Russert. Tim, give us the state of play in the nation's capital right now. We know that the White House and the State Department and CIA have been evacuated. Dennis Hastert has been removed. Where is Dick Cheney at this hour? Do we know?
Tom, he is in a secure location. They won't tell us exactly, but I do know that he is there with his top-level aides. We have heard from some of those people. He has been in constant communication with the President of the United States and the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice. Tom, I've been speaking to people in the intelligence and law enforcement community, in and out, those who have served, those who are serving now. No one is the least bit surprised that there was a terrorist attack on the shores of America. Every person, to a man and woman, absolutely stunned, not only by the magnitude, but by the precision of this attack. They are absolutely convinced that there's only a few cells that could possibly have done this. And this is quite interesting because I didn't realize it until it was pointed out to me. Every one of the 4 hijacked planes that Bob Hager talked to you about was bound for California. In the words of this high-ranking official, the bastards knew they all had a plane full of fuel for the maximum impact upon collision. There is, in my experience in Washington, unprecedented anger here, but no one knows how or where to channel it. Right now, the situation is a bit chaotic. Communication is difficult, but the Bush administration is underscoring that the President is in charge, in command, in constant communication, and will bring these people to justice. They just know it's going to take a long, long time.
Tim, it's also going to be a test of the political maturity, if you will, of Washington. It's a city that has been so riven by what many would describe as petty political disputes. But this is one nation on this day.
Suddenly, the Social Security lockbox seems so trivial, Tom. One official said to me, Tim, your life is going to change, but more important, your son's life is going to change forever. America will never be the same after September 11th, 2001. The levels of security, heightened tension, the way we look at each other and look at our institutions will in fact be altered. That will bring some gratitude, if you will, to the terrorists. And that's why we as a nation, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, are, as they talk with one another today, are absolutely unified in their attempt to strike back, but also try to put salve on the national psyche so we don't become an armed camp resisting an enemy we really can't identify and never know when is striking.
Because the consequences psychologically for this country are every bit as great as they are physically for America as well. It is worth pointing out, I suppose, that we all breathed a great sigh of relief when the Cold War came to an end with the collapse of communism. And yet there was nothing as devastating as this for this country during that long, cold twilight that we faced down communism in Moscow with its considerable nuclear arsenal, which it still has in place, obviously.
You know, Tom, it's a very important point because all during this past few weeks, the debate about missile defense systems, many people were saying publicly, even those proponents or the detractors, well, you know, we're a long way from research on this, but there is a potential threat of a rogue nation launching a missile or an accidental launch from Russia or China modernizing their force. But everyone kept saying the true risk, the real risk is terrorist attack, and we plain don't know how to defend ourselves. But again, and let me underscore this, people are absolutely stunned, disbelieving that something so well coordinated, something is with a tick-tock like this, 4 hijackings within a matter of an hour, and then being able to take those very planes and drive them into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And there is growing suspicion, Tom, here that the plane that landed, it crashed in Pennsylvania, was most likely headed for the Capitol or White House. That's the operating theory of many of the people I've spoken to today.
Thank you very much, NBC's Tim Russert. The equation has changed for all of us personally and professionally in the course of the last several hours, and we'll be dealing with this for a long, long time. But first we want to take you through the eyewitness accounts of people who were witness to what happened here on a very sunny early fall morning in New York today. Some of the eyewitnesses.
I spent a year in combat. I never saw anything like this. Saw a lot of people die, but nothing this devastating.
We carried a bunch of people that we found laying in the debris. There was complete darkness. We stumbled over some people. We picked them up and carried them across the street.
You could hear the rumbling. When you looked up, you could see the top of the building just crumbling.
Then there was the haunting story from an eyewitness that we heard from a few moments ago of people in wheelchairs who were unable to get out of the building as he ran down the stairs, and he was obviously overcome with emotion as he described that for us. We don't have any numbers for you. We're trying to be as circumspect as we can be. All public officials are saying that they expect the final death toll to be horrendous, but this business of determining how many people are still in the rubble will take many, many hours, if not days, to determine. Here is a quick summary of what we have been through today in this country on the 11th of September, the year 2001. At 8:42 this morning, first one plane that had been hijacked crashed into the World Trade Center. Then, not too long after that, a second plane. About an hour later, the Pentagon was attacked by a hijacked airliner, and then came word that another hijacked airliner had crashed outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When we saw the first reports and witnessed, those of us who live in New York, of the World Trade Center being hit by an airplane, at first all of us thought, I'm sure, that it had to be some kind of a terrible accident. And then, when we heard that a second plane, and you could see it flown deliberately into the World Trade Center, the horror of this terrorist war began to unfold, and it continues to unfold here now almost 5 hours later. And we'll be continuing to cover this across America and in the nation's capital. NBC's Pat Dawson has been not too far from the World Trade Center throughout most of the day, where it has been chaotic and terrifying. Pat?
Tom, as you point out, we try not to exaggerate very much in this circumstance, and yet in many ways it's hard not to exaggerate just the things we have been seeing and the things that we have been told. I think it is fair to say that the task that now confronts rescue workers here is Herculean, a very, very difficult task, and it is of two parts. It has been about 3 hours since what we might call the last catastrophic incident in a morning of catastrophes. That is since the North Tower of the World Trade Center, which used to stand behind me just about 10 blocks south. Right below there, it used to tower above the buildings, which you can see, and obviously it is no longer there, nor is the South Tower. 3.5 hours since that happened. There have been no catastrophic incidents since then, but it has affected the rescue effort clearly because they are afraid of what could happen, what still might happen, since there were a sequence of catastrophes, if you will. That has made the rescue very, very difficult. At this point, we are being told unofficially that there may be as many as 200 to 300 rescue workers who are actually down there. We have seen pictures of some of them. They are down around the base of this building. They are beginning the, again to use that word, Herculean task of trying to find the people who might be alive in that debris. We know that there are a great number of people who are dead in there, unquestionably. What they are hoping to find is survivors, and at this point they really can't speculate on how many there are, how many there could be, and I don't think it really serves us at this point to speculate on the numbers that it could be. One of the tasks, though, is to try to get this rescue effort in its entirety going, and as you can see behind me down here, there are probably hundreds of New York City and New York State and federal rescue people who are involved, fire, police, emergency service, quite a few. In addition to those, the task is certainly aided by the American Red Cross's disaster relief teams. They are here on the scene. This is Frank Donahue, who is with the American Red Cross. Frank, tell me first of all, as you start out here, what is it you're trying to do?
Well, our immediate purpose is to kind of assess what role the Red Cross can play initially, and certainly it's to help the emergency medical people that are here provide any kind of relief and support we can for them. People being evacuated from neighborhoods need a place to go, and the Red Cross is setting up service centers and shelters. There's one at Grand Central Station and Penn Station. And then the blood supply, making sure we have a safe blood supply, not only here, but throughout the country.
Do you have any idea, have you heard, how many casualties have been dealt with so far?
No, I have not. I'm sorry, I have not heard that.
Is it, now part of your task, though, is also to provide blood supplies. Obviously, that will be needed in huge
Absolutely, and people throughout the country are responding. They should call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE. It's important to know that this incident, and you know, there's blood needed here in Altoona, there's blood needed all throughout the country that's been affected by this disaster. Another part is people that are moving around, are traveling today. No airport in this country is open. And so Red Cross volunteers are in every airport providing assistance to families. Families are calling the Red Cross here in New York as they are calling their local Red Cross to try to communicate and find the well-being of people that are in this building, as well as people in the other affected areas. So
you were also telling me about grief counseling and dealing with people who've been traumatized around the country, maybe at other airports.
Absolutely. Boston, for example, LAX, where those airplanes were coming from and headed to, we have Red Cross mental health worker volunteers there that are providing assistance to families. And again, that's happening throughout the country where people have been affected by this disaster. Here in New York alone, the Greater New York Red Cross has had lots of experience at the World Trade Center a number of years ago. Today, there's about 1,200 local Red Cross volunteers here in New York providing food and shelter, direction, and support to people that are incredibly affected by this incident.
And how many Red Cross workers do you think around the country?
Oh, a number of thousand, a couple thousand for sure. I know in Philadelphia, where I came from, we're on standby working with emergency management. It's the same thing in every major metropolitan area that Red Cross workers work closely with emergency management.
Frank, thank you so much for taking some time out. We appreciate it. That was Frank Donahue, the American Red Cross. Tom, that brings you pretty much as much information as we have here in what remains a fairly chaotic situation. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Pat Dawson. As the shock begins to wear down, we're going to all of us are going to have our patience tested as well as we await these reports. We'll try to deal with it as factually as we possibly can. It does now appear that the wave of attacks is over. We could not be certain of that just a few hours ago, as there were these reports of planes that were still in the air, some that had been hijacked, and their destinations were uncertain at that time. This is a live picture of Lower Manhattan, missing two of its most familiar profiles, obviously. The twin trade towers of the World Trade Center, iconic buildings here in New York, really representing, symbolic, if you will, of the enormous economic strength of this country. They sustained an attack in 1993. They were reopened. The country came back from that, and we went about our merry way again, thinking that in Fortress America this couldn't possibly happen. But of course it has. Neil Livingston is one of the most widely recognized experts on international terrorism. Mr. Livingston, we keep coming back to the same issue. This was a very sophisticated attack. This was not just a lone suicide bomber of some kind. 4 hijacking simultaneously. Obviously someone in the cockpit who knew how to get the plane to the targets that they wanted to get them to. And it had to have happened over a long period of time, and they were all transcontinental flights loaded with fuel.
Tom, this is our worst-case nightmare scenario, the one that we've hoped would never happen, and that would be a multiplicity of targets with a multiplicity of highly sophisticated bombs, in this case aircraft, and very symbolic targets. And so this great deal of thought went into this, a great deal of time and money. This kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. So we can anticipate that maybe a year or more was probably devoted to planning this attack, and there may be others coming.
Mr. Livingston, I remember that the FBI has been concerned for some time about the number of cells harboring terrorists in America that have been growing. Is that true?
Well, there clearly are a number of people in the United States that have been the beneficiaries of our relatively liberal immigration policy that have hidden within various communities here and have expressed very strong anti-American sentiments. Whether that can be translated into terrorism at this point is open to question. I would suspect that what we will see in this case are perhaps foreign nationals who have arrived in the United States strictly to carry out this mission, hijack these aircrafts, and take them to their targets. Very similar to what we saw in that millennial potential attack when a man was arrested at the border in Washington State who was going to carry out bombing attacks in the United States. He was an outsider who had been sent here to do that.
All right, Neil Livingston, thank you very much. I also have on the phone now Anthony Lake, Tony Lake, a former National Security Advisor to President Clinton, who's been a longtime student of the prospect of terrorism in this country, recently wrote a riveting fictional account of the various scenarios that the United States may have to deal with. But even in your most wildest imaginative days, Tony, you could not have anticipated something like this.
No, it's terrible. It's hard to say you can be lucky in any respect in something in such a catastrophe. But one of the great dangers still lurking out there is that it could have involved some kind of weapon of mass destruction.
But at the same time, it's hard to understate the amount of damage that has been done here physically and certainly in terms of loss of life. When you have an institution like the Pentagon attack, the World Trade Center's attacked, and the plane that went to Pittsburgh might have been headed for the Capitol or the White House, for God's sake.
No, this is terrible. As I said, a catastrophe. Clearly a very sophisticated terrorist attack. Our intelligence community has headed off some in the past year or two. Their ability to evade our usual intelligence gathering methods in order to pull this off is extraordinary. And one question now we need to focus on is not only why did this happen, but where do we go from here?
Well, short term, if you were the National Security Advisor now back in your old office in the White House, what would be your recommendations in terms of a suppression of some of our normal liberties that we have in this country?
Well, we mustn't defeat our liberties in trying to defend them. I think what I would be urging now is, first of all, of course, get all the information we can immediately while dealing with the human dimensions of this catastrophe. And then thinking ahead, I think there are 3 fronts we have to act on. One, there must be, once we have identified the source of this, there must be an American response to this of some kind.
And once again, we are going to interrupt the NBC News special coverage of the tragedy in Lower Manhattan today to bring you what we know about the situation here in our area. Again, rescue workers continue to be on the scene, trying to determine if there are people trapped still inside those buildings. We have absolutely no word on the number of casualties. We can only imagine what it might amount to be.
I can only imagine what our hearts have to go out, certainly to those people who don't know, who have relatives and friends and acquaintances down there. in the World Trade Center area and other areas in this country that have been hit by this. I just arrived here about an hour ago and have been watching the coverage. I understand that we have Mayor Giuliani. We'll get to him in just a second here, but I had to drive in. It was difficult getting in from Connecticut, and from a slightly different perspective. Coming in, you could see the plume of smoke from Westchester County in the World Trade Center, and it was just a startling thought that this smear on the landscape, this symbol of terror and an assault on our country, could be seen from so far away. And as I came down, approaching Midtown, traffic was stopped. A blood van went through, trying to head down to the area where it was needed most.
Of course, and we do need blood donations desperately. We've had calls from all of the hospitals asking for help, and of course, if you're nearby and able to get to them, please do go donate blood. Chuck, again, we're taking a look now at the towers collapsing, but you're a pilot, and eyewitnesses initially began to tell us about the size and the scope of the airplanes that they saw making a beeline towards these towers. And at that point, we, couldn't imagine that there would be a pilot that would actually be doing that. Now, we know now that these are two United States aircraft. The pilots obviously the regular pilots were obviously not at the controls at that point.
One would assume that whoever took command of the planes also took control of the planes with some basic knowledge of aviation. What I will tell you is that as you look at that cascading wreckage of the collapse of the World Trade Center, that somewhere in that wreckage are 2 cockpit voice recorders and 2 flight data recorders. And they may be the most vital clues in this investigation, because whatever was said in that cockpit for the last 45 minutes of the flight is going to be recorded and retained. Those things are designed to withstand crashes. And odds are they'll be found by investigators, and clues will be in that tape, particularly the cockpit voice recorder. There's no mystery about the flight. We know exactly what happened. So the flight data recorder will only confirm what we saw with our own eyes. But the cockpit voice recorder will have in it, unless these guys were sophisticated enough
to disable it? To
pull the circuit breakers in the cockpit voice recorders. But they may have wanted to leave a message. So I would say, as we think about, along 2 tracks here, we're thinking, of course, about trying to rescue the people who are still alive, trying to save as many lives as possible from this terrible attack on our country. The other line of thought is, who did it and what do we do? This is a whole new chapter in a war of terror on this planet. And I think that certainly those voice recorders are going to be a very high priority item for any investigators.
There was also some speculation, I should caution, from an author who has followed terrorist acts very closely and has done a lot of reporting and writing about them, and she suggested that this was geared for maximum media attention.
Well, certainly, and if that's the intention, it generally is in acts of terror. It worked. We have no choice but to cover this hideous tragedy. And certainly the sequencing of the planes into the World Trade Center, when all attention was fixed on the first impact, to see the second plane strike as dramatically as it did. Well, you couldn't have, if you were planning it as a terrorist, you couldn't have planned it better.
In fact, the nation's air system right now is basically paralyzed, shut down. So there are a lot of people outside of New York who are affected by this tragedy because they will not be getting to where they wanted to go right now. As we look once again at this amazing home video, shot in fact by a Dateline producer, as the World Trade Center tower collapsed right in front of his eyes.
He's lucky to have survived that.
Well, his description of what he did, he ran along with some police officers who were right by him. They ran, they turned a corner, became black as night, and he dove underneath the car, and that is the only thing that saved him.
Omar Warsaw's is with us here. He was actually in the area and felt the explosion, and I see, this had a rather profound effect on you, Omar. You saw firsthand, up close, exactly what happened and how terrifying that explosion was and the collapse.
I was in the area, and before the buildings collapsed, there were lots of people standing around basically looking at the explosion, and we were sort of talking to each other, amazed that it hadn't collapsed, and then all of a sudden there was this thunderous crack, and you saw the building start to, sort of move, and everybody just in this sort of riotous tumble began pouring down the street. Like something out of a movie. There was this billowing cloud of smoke. I was scared that a building would topple and in a domino effect crush us, darted into a lobby, and then just, it sort of the outside became nighttime.
You were actually, at one point, outrunning the smoke behind you, or trying to outrun it, weren't
Yeah, exactly, and it was quite scary because there were all these people who had been watching now sort of trying to run away, and so people were stumbling over each other, and you could look behind you and see. I mean, I was convinced that one of the buildings was tumbling in part because there was smoke billowing out of it, and so not just the World Trade Center but buildings around it, and yeah, it was quite frightening.
And as I understand it, you actually there was somebody who was injured, and you then carried them someplace to get them treatment.
Well, the people who were in the sort of the doormen of the building were quite professional. They put us in the basement, and while we were in the basement, I noticed a gentleman was bleeding from his ankle, and me and another fellow carried him out of the building. When we got outside, it was as if it were nighttime. And you know, you were breathing all of this dust and smoke, and we sort of carried him to a Duane Reade, where they offered us some stuff, and then finally got him to a nurse far away. But it was quite terrifying, not only because you couldn't see very well, but because there was the sound of the airplanes coming overhead, and of course, when you hear the airplane, you think it's another terrorist attack, and then there would be more sort of wild cracking sounds, and so every now and then everybody would start to charge down the street, fearing that another building was collapsing.
We know the World Trade Center towers are gone, which is difficult to believe. But what did you see, Omar, in terms of other damage to other nearby buildings in this very tightly packed part of Manhattan?
Well, when I first got down there, all you saw were sort of scattered papers and the kind of fire and smoke coming out of the building, and so it seemed like it was going to be contained to that. When we got out, it was so dark, so dusty, you couldn't see anything. I mean, you were happy to see 20 feet in front of you.
As we've been watching all of these scenes, there have been many instances of certainly heroic efforts, not only by the policemen and the firefighters, but certainly by passersby in the street just simply trying to help one another to escape this horrid situation.
That was actually one of the inspiring things, was that people were making water available, people were really trying to be helpful, and so there was a kind of civic response that was inspiring.
We said a moment ago that Mayor Giuliani has made a more recent statement. We've heard from him a couple of times informally, but now I think we have some videotape of the mayor commenting on today's tragedy.
I would, first of all, once again remind everyone to evacuate Lower Manhattan. I mean, further away from Lower Manhattan you can get, the safer it's going to be for you with regard to the smoke, and the easier it's going to be for the police and the fire and everyone else to evacuate the people that need to be evacuated. We're going to try to get as many emergency personnel down there as possible. We've communicated with the governor, the National Guard will assist us later in the day. We've communicated with the White House, and the urban search and rescue teams will be here later to help us and assist us. And the government is doing everything it can to secure the airspace around the city of New York. At this point, I don't know the reason for this. I don't have any more insight into this than anyone else does, other than the two planes attacked the World Trade Center. Tremendous damage has been done to both buildings. I don't even have a guess at the amount of damage in terms of the loss of human life. And this is a horrible, horrible, awful day. Our focus now has to be on trying to evacuate as many people as possible, save as many lives as we possibly can, and make the city as secure as possible. The subways are running in the rest of the city. Lexington Avenue is starting to run again, so people need to use the subway to get out of Lower Manhattan. They'll be able to use the subway. And we need people out of there so that the rescue efforts can go on all during the afternoon. I suspect they'll be going on through the night, and we'll be getting relief from the National Guard and the federal government later today.
Mr. Mayor, any indication on ballpark number?
I don't want to. Obviously, there are all kinds of numbers that are swimming in my head as to what the numbers must be, but I don't know. I have no idea what the numbers are. It's horrible. I think any of you that saw this have probably never seen anything like this before. The people jumping out of the building, and it's a horrible, horrible thing to see.
In terms of the police mobilization, maybe the commissioner can tell us what's going on downtown. Have you brought in additional cops, presumably from all over?
There's additional resources coming from all over the city. We've activated off-duty MOS to come in. We're getting the assistance of New Jersey and the outer line counties. And they're all kind of pushing in toward Lower Manhattan.
Are either of you hearing anything from from the federal government with regard to either what's going on in Washington or intelligence or anything out of federal law enforcement?
The only thing that we've heard is what I guess is publicly available, that the Pentagon was attacked, that there were other apparent attempted attacks in other parts of the country, some of which were stopped. And I'm not sure I know how accurate all that information is, but it appears as if there have been either attacks or attempts to attack various parts of the United States.
Commissioner Bonnet?
Well, the mayor there was flanked by the Police Commissioner Bernard Carrick, Fire Commissioner Thomas Van Essen, three very stone-faced, sober-looking men who are coping with a massive tragedy in their city, our city. September 11th, 2001, in the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt after the attack on Pearl Harbor, it's a date that will live in infamy. And we're looking at it right now. This is the perhaps signature shot. Well, look at the bridge. We've got people who are evacuating themselves from Manhattan on foot. I'm not sure what bridge that is.
It's the Brooklyn
Bridge, okay.
Which, of course, is a downtown bridge. Lots of people who work on Wall Street are probably just taking that bridge. Manhattan Bridge.
59th Street Bridge also, we're told, is open to pedestrians, only for pedestrians. There are some other bridges that are open now outbound, the Verrazano, the Goethals, the Outer Bridge. The following open to Queens, but not the Bronx or Manhattan. The Whitestone, the Throgs Neck, and the Triborough Bridge open to Queens, but not coming back into Manhattan.
That's only outbound.
Right.
For people who want to get home, get out, obviously.
Speaking of attempting to get home, Pat Battle is in New Jersey at the site of the ferries, and an awful lot of people have not only been coming home that way, but they've used it to transport some of the injured, Pat.
Well, Jane, we're at the foot of York Street in Jersey City, just across the river from downtown Manhattan, which, of course, is now obliterated virtually by a cloud of smoke. But at any rate, a full state of emergency has been declared here in Jersey City. In this area of Exchange Place, all these buildings have been evacuated, and this area has been transformed into a virtual triage center. The New York Waterways Ferry, since we've been here at 10:30 this morning, made more than a dozen trips across the river, bringing people from Lower Manhattan over to New Jersey. All of them are in shock. Many of them injured, all of them just trying to get out of Manhattan. At this point, we can tell you that the ferry has stopped running for the moment. There were also tugboats bringing over the injured. A lot of those people had to be taken out of here on stretchers. There were children among them, firefighters, New York City firefighters, New York City police officers. It was just an incredible scene down here. Emergency service personnel waiting there on the dock to get those people off the ferry and take them to safety. Many of them just wanted to get somewhere and get home and get away from this. A lot of them were given oxygen on the scene, being treated for incredible respiratory problems. People were choking. There were lots of people bringing down water so that they could simply rinse out their mouths, get the smoke out of their hair and their lungs. It was just an incredible scene down here all morning, and it continues as we speak. We're now been pushed back about 200 yards from that triage area, but there are still people down there receiving treatment. People had broken bones, cuts. There were people bleeding, coughing. Just an incredible scene. Now, earlier today, we met an EMT, an emergency medical technician. He works for Hatsola, which is the private ambulance service in New York City. You got down there after the first tower collapsed, but were actually unable to ever get that close to the scene because you got caught in it yourself. Mark Weiss.
Yeah, as we arrived from Staten Island, we were sent, our ambulances were sent to certain triage areas. We had our stretchers out and we were waiting, and what you saw there was, I don't even have the words. You looked at the towers and you saw every 30 seconds people were jumping out all over. It was devastating. And then must have been about 5 minutes later that you heard, like you hear in a movie theater, in surround sound, and you saw this building just blow up, the First Trade Center, and we all ran, and I ran under a overpass, and we just laid down, and you saw 2 cars fly over us with boulders, and I mean, we basically said Shema, and we were dead. I mean, there was no question about that. It was black. You couldn't see a thing. You just, our mouths were full. We were about 8 of us under there, and we started moving, and you just walked and whatever to some light. And we somehow, thank God, we made it to where the water was, and we jumped on a police boat. And I ended up staying on there about 4 trips to get people across, and then I just had to get off. And I mean, I'm just staring at this thing over there, and there's no word how many tens and tens of thousands of people are dead here. It's like not to be believed. I was just in touch with one of our ambulances there who were just running in and back. We must have 500 members on the scene and just running in and back. to the hospitals with people who are totally 80, 90% with burns on their body. I mean, whatever did something like this, it's just not to be believed.
I'm sure you're counting your blessings, Mark, that you were able to get out of there alive, but I know that you're also looking back and saying, God, I couldn't help anybody there.
I mean, we came to help, and we are helping, and all of us are helping, and we're trying whatever we can do to help. But, emergency personnel come down, and we're at the same risk. And then in the middle of this whole thing, they try to evacuate because they said there was a bad gas leak. So then, we all jump and go to run, but then we have to stop and think. We're here to help. So, it's such a catch-22, but nobody should ever have to see what we saw here this morning. And I barely saw anything, what they're seeing now over there. I'm going to head back over there, but it's just sick.